Section 1.5 is about circles, so go ahead and pause the video and write down these notes. So the equation of a circle, x minus h quantity squared plus y minus k quantity squared is equal to r squared, where h is the x-coordinate of your center and k is the y-coordinate of your center and r is your radius. Notice there's these minuses in the original equation and this squared on your r over here in your original equation. This is the same thing as our distance formula. On the distance formula, we just square root both sides. So we want to find the equation of a circle that has a center of 1, -2, and that contains the point 4, -4. So remember our equation for a circle. So we have our center, so 1 is h, and -2 is k. So I'm going to go ahead and fill that in. I have x minus 1 quantity squared plus y plus 2 quantity squared is equal to r squared. I don't know r, but I do know another point on this graph. So I have an x, y that I could plug in and use that to solve for r. So go ahead and pause the video and plug in 4, -4 for x and y and solve for r squared. So if you plug in 4, -4 for x and y, you end up with r squared to be 13. So that makes your equation x minus 1 quantity squared plus y plus 2 quantity squared is equal to 13. So now we want to graph it. Always the first thing you want to do is graph the center and then find the radius, or in this case they give you another point, and create a circle out of it. So if you haven't already done so, go ahead and pause the video and do that. So to graph this, first I started by plotting the center point, and then I plotted the point that we knew, 4, -4, and I created a decently round circle out of it. So for the next one, we want to graph this circle and find the center and the radius. In order to do that, we need to complete the square. So if you need a little review completing the square, I suggest watching the section 8.6 complete the square video. That's a link to this. So this one we need to complete the square in 2 variables. So I grouped our x's together and our y's together and then moved the 12 to the other side. There's no leading coefficients on either of the squared terms, so you don't need to factor anything out. So now you're going to look at the b term for this first one, this 4x. You're going to divide by 2 and square it. So 4 divided by 2 is 2 squared is 4, so I'm going to add a 4 here. You have to think of it as a scale. Whatever I do to one side, I have to do the other, so I added a 4 to the left side, means I have to add a 4 to the right side. Same thing with the next one, divide by 2 and square it. -6 divided by 2 is -3, squared is 9. Whatever I do to one side, I also have to do to the other side. So then if I write them in my binomials, it's just this linear term, same sign, so if this is a plus and this is a plus, and then whatever this was before you squared it. So when you divided by 2, it was a 2, so that's what goes here, squared. Same thing here, that just stays a y. Same sign, this is a minus, this is going to be a minus, whatever it was before you squared it. 6 divided by 2 was 3. And then I simplified the right side and you end up with a 1. So pause the video and write the center and radius off of this and graph it. So remember, it originally has a negative inside here, so if this is a +2, that means that h is -2. This is originally a minus, so if this is a -3, this is really a +3. So our center is -2, 3. This is r squared, so r squared is equal to 1, which means square root of that, r is just also equal to 1. So you end up with this circle. So now we're going to try the same thing again. The only difference on this one is we do have leading coefficients on our squared terms. So the first thing you always have to do is factor those out. So I'm going to factor a 3 out of the x squared and also out of the 12x when I combine them together. Leave a space to complete my square. I'm going to factor a 3 out of the y squared and also the -6y. So I get -2y. And then leave a space, and then I'm going to move the 12 to the other side. So now go ahead and pause the video and find the numbers that would go in here that help us complete the square. So divide 4 by 2 and square it, you end up with 4. Divide 2 by 2 and square it, you end up with 1. But we didn't really add 4 right here. We really added 3 times 4 because we have this 3 on the outside. So what did we really add to this side of the equation? 3 times 4 is 12, so we really added a 12 to the left side, which means we really need to add a 12 to the right side. So you always have to be careful of that when you have that factor out in front. Same thing over here, we didn't really add a 1, we really added 3 times 1, so we need to add a 3 to the right side. So go ahead and pause the video and finish completing the square. So it's whatever it was before you squared it with the same sign. So I have a plus, it was a 2 here, so it's going to be a 2. I have a minus, it was a 1 before you squared it, so it's a 1. The only thing with the circles is you always have to have a 1 out in front. So to get rid of these 3's, I'm going to divide every single term by 3. So we end up with x plus 2 quantity squared plus y minus 1 quantity squared is equal to 9. So now go ahead and pause the video, find the center, radius, and graph this circle. So you should have ended up with x plus 2 quantity squared plus y minus 1 quantity squared equals 9, which means the center is negative 2, 1. Make sure you flip the signs. This 9 is r squared, so you need to take the square root of that. The radius is 3. So you end up with a circle that looks like this.